Hello, Vickie Magic here from My Destiny Designer and the Wake Up You've Got This podcast. So the Wake Up You've Got This podcast is all about sharing with our listeners that actually you already have everything that you need to be everything that you ever want to be. And this is just an opportunity to share with you some tools and some tips from some of our amazing people here on the Sunshine Coast to help to give you a little bit of information and education. So today we are with Michael White from Oz Identities. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Vickie.
So, Michael, to begin with, I'd love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about your background and your business as well.
Sure. So my business is in the business of education, really. That's where I am right now. But it wasn't always that way. I was in hospitality for 20 years. So after I left school, I started to travel. I sort of stumbled into restaurants and hotels. And I spent the next 20 years running restaurants and hotels all around the world.
Yep.
So it seems like not a very obvious step to take, moving from a restaurant into the world of training. But my training's all about people, understanding people, where they're coming from, why we do what we do. And of course, the hospitality game really prepared me very well for that. It's all about reading people, understanding the different needs, the different wants, the different communication styles of your customers. So it actually has prepared me really well for a life in training.
And Michael, I know that you started in this education industry through the desire of actually sharing with young people what you wished you'd learnt yourself or what you wish you'd been yourself. Do you want to share that little takeaway with us? Because I loved the way that you worded it.
Oh, really? I'm trying to remember what I said now.
You said, I'll tell you exactly what you said. A few years later, I came across a saying that said, become the person that you needed when you were young.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that just rings so true for me because I left school at 15, no qualifications. So if I was around today, I would be what we call a high school dropout. And then I spent the next 20 years wandering the earth. Of course, I was working in the restaurants, so I wasn't sort of homeless.
Yeah.
But it was essentially wandering the earth, looking for direction with my life. I mean, current model of education, even then, wasn't really connecting us with ourselves. And it was only much later that I came to the idea that people are different. We have different value systems, different belief systems. And of course, there are different paths available to us. And then I came across this wonderful saying is that, we should attempt to become the person our younger self most needed. And so for me, the person that I needed way back then was somebody to just tell me who I was and point the direction that my life needed to take. So I tried to reinvent myself, nearly 20 years ago now, in that mold, and started working with young people in Noosa, groups of about 20 at a time, disengaged high school students from around the Sunshine Coast.
Fantastic.
And it was like the education department had these people, these kids, for 10 years and totally messed them up. And I was paid the princely sum, I think, of about $500 a week for 10 weeks to try and unmess them up. And I quickly realized that, if I was the one who was trying to unmess these kids up, it was going to be very hard work. So I started setting about giving them the tools to unmess themselves up. And part of that was connecting them with their own personality, with their own innate nature. And out of it, eventually, Oz Identities was born.
So explain a little bit to our listeners what exactly Oz Identities is and does.
Essentially, a shorthand way of looking at it, it's personality profiling. But it really doesn't do it justice if you just call it personality profiling. It works much deeper than that. So we're trying to uncover a person's innate core needs. Based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's an essential set of needs we all need to have met before we can access our true potential. And it's the identification of these needs and the discovery of how we can go about meeting them ourselves that actually becomes the point of empowerment for young people. They don't want somebody to hold their hand so much as they want them to point them in the right direction. And that's what this does. It points people in the right direction. It says, here are your needs. Here are healthy ways about going about getting those needs met. Here is your value system. Carry that with you as a guide, as a moral compass on your journey. And your life will start to function at a much higher level. And that's what I found, is that a lot of these kids actually went back into employment, back into school, and did much better with their lives than previously thought possible.
So that must be very rewarding for you.
It is now when I look back upon it, but at the time I was just overwhelmed by what was going on, because I had this desire to move from the hospitality world into the training world, and to have constant stream of 20 kids, 20 high school students coming through my office doors every 10 to 12 weeks. Was just overwhelming. So I never really got a chance back then to sit back and enjoy the journey, so to speak. It was just caught up in this storm of transformation, both of them and of myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love the unique point of difference with the animals. Share that with us.
Well, I was working with something called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator at first, which is cumbersome, it's clunky, it's also 16 personality types. So I was looking around for something a whole lot simpler. And that's when I came across the Kiersian temperaments, which was aligned with the Myers-Briggs, but there was only 4 categories, 4 different types. And then, of course, I looked at who else had been using a model of 4, and found out the Native American Indians had been using a model of 4 for hundreds of years. And they're using animal metaphors, animal totems, to empower their young people. And they were using the bear, the mouse, the eagle, and, the buffalo. That's the 4th one. And I actually used that model for about a year before somebody asked me, well, why don't you use Australian animals?
Yeah.
So then I set about creating these Australian animals and incorporated the work of a man from the Middle Ages called Paracelsus. He was actually a philosopher as well as a doctor, lectured at the University of Zurich in 1500s, and he aligned the personality differences of people with the 4 elements of air, fire, water, and earth.
Yep.
So I set about creating 4 animals that actually aligned with the 4 elements of air, fire, water, and earth. So you can see that quite plainly, that dolphin would be the water,
Yep.
eagle the air, wombat is earth, and the red kangaroo is my fire type.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's how it came about.
Fantastic. And so when was your moment of awakening, when you woke up to the fact that your life was actually in your hands?
It was somewhere along the journey of working with the young people where I was transforming their lives, so I thought, but the reality is that I was just transforming my own life,
Yep.
you know. And I think it was somewhere when I was working with those young people that I finally realized that, hey, my destiny is in my own hands.
Yep.
Up until that point, I had been working for the state government, well, actually for private industry, who went cap in hand to the state government looking for grants to run these programs, hence the princely sum of $500 a week.
Yep.
So I thought, true empowerment must be empowerment on all levels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
not just physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional, but financially too.
Absolutely.
So the penny dropped around about 2005, and I set up the business. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go out on my own and trust. Just trust. You know, the old saying, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
Field of Dreams stuff.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I had built the core of Oz Identities,
Yep.
the animal types, and paid people to produce a website and business cards. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I just knew to live what I was speaking, which was that of self-liberation, self-empowerment. I had to step out on my own. Mm-hmm. So it was around about that 2005 time when I registered my business, and I went out and I got my first client, and that first client paid me as much for a day's work as I would normally get for a week's work. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm on a trajectory here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now let me point out to your listeners that I didn't do it for the money, but the money is a nice indication that you're traveling in a direction that's healthy for you.
That you're on the right track.
That you're on the right track. It just becomes another milestone. I got in this for altruistic reasons. The money just helped me to sustain my family. And then I had a wife and young children.
Yeah.
And we were living hand to mouth because I was chasing my dreams.
Yeah.
And this just made it that much easier for me to do that. So that was great validation for my decision to take that step.
Yep. And so when was that? How long have you had Oz Identities? 2000 and...
Well, that was 2005
Yes,
I first registered it.
Yeah, okay. And so tell us about the journey since then.
Journey since then has been amazing.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember somebody asking me in about 2005, 2006, well, now that you've got the business and you've started to get clients, what do you want to do with it? And my answer was simple. I want to transform the way we educate our kids in this country. You know, I'm not denouncing the need for maths and science and all those other STEM projects.
There's just
STEM
more.
subject. There's just more to it. There has to be some kind of self-awareness, self-empowerment, critical thinking. Give them some direction in life. Give them some robustness, the ability to bounce back, if you like, from setbacks. I think there was a study done in America about the 2 greatest indicators of success in a person's life. One, direction, as in goals and benchmarks. And the other one is, they called it grit, but it's really resilience. Yes, the ability to bounce back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so it was very important for me to empower these young people to bounce back and to move forward. And I said, I want to transform education in Australia. I didn't even say Queensland, it was just Australia. And people laughed. They said, you know, you're in a rubber dinghy and you're going to try and get a super tanker to change direction.
Yeah.
I said, well, it's called a lofty goal, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, Vickie, here I am 15 years later, 350 schools, nearly 25,000 teachers that I've worked with.
Wow.
I know it's really just scratching the surface, but I mean, that was through my solitary efforts. And now that I'm getting other people to work with me and for me, that continues to grow and my reach continues to grow. So I set myself lofty goals back then, transforming education. I haven't transformed it yet, but I'm still on that path.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And you will. So if there was a tip or a tool or a gift or a learning that you have got over these years that you would be happy to share with our listeners, what might that be? You know, sort of one of the best lessons or learnings or gifts that you've learnt yourself?
Gosh, 2 things. There is no right way to live your life. Some people lead it back to front, and some people lead it in a linear fashion, which is, you know, work hard, save hard, retire at 60. And that becomes a model then for success for some people. But it's not for everybody. So walk your own path. And the other essential, of course, is don't let anybody else define what success looks like. You know?
Yeah, because what success looks like for one person is definitely not what it looks like for another.
No, and this whole success of being wealthy and retired and lying on a beach, that doesn't suit many people. You know, the story about the grey nomads is that thousands of people buy their Winnebagos and go travelling around Australia and said, we're going to travel Australia for the next 20 years. Well, actually, the majority of them travel Australia for 2 years before they get tired of the open road and all of that freedom. And they look then to gain employment or even voluntary work going forwards, because it's part of our innate natures to want meaning and purpose in our day.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I was to ask you, have you got this? What would be your answer?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've got it. It took me a long time, but I've got it.
So share a little bit about, how you've got this.
Well, what's the old saying? If you make your vacation your vocation, you never work a day in your life again. And I really do believe that for the past 15 years, there's hardly a day that I've worked. You know, it's been a natural expression of who I am. And I would never have thought when I was working behind those bars mixing cocktails or in the restaurant serving plates of food that I would be the author of 5 books on personality. I would have lectured to 350, 400 schools, whatever it is now, to thousands of business people in a variety of professions, from not-for-profit to high profit. I would never have thought that I would become the person that I am. but I don't let myself get carried away. I maintain a low-key existence, if you like, where my greatest joy comes from bumping up against the natural elements. So before I go to work in the morning, I try and get out for a walk, a swim, a stand-up paddle, get into the waves. That's essential to start the day, an hour or two. Come back, have a healthy breakfast to set me up for the day. And then, unless I'm working with a client, I try and only work through till about lunchtime, and then work on my own education, reading books, talking to people, having meetings, growing my knowledge, growing awareness, and also growing opportunities for collaboration with other people.
Yeah.
So I'm happy, I'm healthy, my relationships are off the scale, with my children, with my friends, with my family. It's all great, happy, healthy stuff. Of course, I've got my challenges, but I see them now as challenges, not as problems or issues.
Yeah, fantastic. And so if you were to be asked from, somebody who wanted to get this as well, so there might be somebody listening who hasn't got this thing called life, and they really do need a wake-up call, what advice would you give them to find that wake-up?
Again, I got this message from somebody else. It's actually from Anthony Robbins, the great, motivational speaker.
Of course, I love.
And he said, an internal victory always precedes an external victory. And I thought about that long and hard, and I thought, basically what he's saying is that until we change ourselves internally, our external environment won't change. So for your listeners, for people who can hear what we're saying today, I would say is start working on yourself. When you accept responsibility for your life the way that it is, you automatically empower yourself to become the person you most need to be to transform and change that. And it all starts, for me, with self-awareness. Who are you? What are your core needs? How can you meet them core needs in a healthy way? That's going to give you your happiness. What are your core values? That will give you your moral compass and direction in life.
Yeah.
Take those essential ingredients and start to apply them in all areas of your life, and watch it transform.
Yeah.
It's there. It's innate. It just, sometimes you need a little bit of coaching to get the ball rolling, to get it started. But once it's started, it quickly becomes a journey of self-responsibility.
Yep. And if I was talking to, and this isn't on the questions that you got, and that's okay. So if I was talking to one of your students who had been through your work, what would they tell me that they achieved from doing that work?
Well, at a very elemental level, they would probably all say they got a better understanding of themselves. Okay? And that's essential for going forwards, better understanding of ourselves. I think that some of them then would go on to say that they had got direction in their lives as a result of understanding themselves at a deeper level.
Yeah.
And then there are a few, and some of these people have come back to see me. It's very rare that the kids actually come back to seek me out and tell me of their successes. But sometimes people come back and attribute their success in life to the initial workshop that they did with me, which transformed their life. I met a young person who came to see me, would have been a couple of years ago now. And he was pot-smoking, depressed 16-year-old when he landed in my course. And here he is 10 years later, a practicing psychologist in Brisbane, doing really well for himself. And that's the transformative power of self-awareness.
Yeah. And so in the main, where do you, kind of get these students from? So is it through you going to schools and then doing the teachings in the schools? Is that how it works? Or how?
It's actually grown through word of mouth.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was working with the teenagers, and then sometimes their parents, sometimes their principals would come to me and say, what is it you're doing with them that's so different? Because we're noticing a marked improvement in their attitude towards life.
Yep.
And then I would share, and then I would get the invitations to the schools. And through the invitations to the schools, the principals would start talking amongst themselves. And then I got the invitations to the Queensland Education Leadership Institute, the Queensland Association of State School Principals, the Indigenous Education Leadership Institute. They all approached me to ask me what I was doing and whether we could collaborate. Yeah. So access has been amazing. And my day can be varied because sometimes I'll hop on a plane and I'm flying to Outback Australia to work with some schools. And I think I'm going to work with the kids and I end up working with the teachers. And sometimes I think I'm going to work with the teachers and I end up working with the kids.
Yeah.
I never know what's going to happen.
Variety.
It's variety and it's surprises. I went to a school recently and I was supposed to be working with the teachers, but we finished early. So there was an hour or two window of opportunity for me to do something else. So I actually did reading recovery with the little grade 4s and 5s. Yep. And that was just something blew me away because I started reading them about Oz identities, about the animals. And they were able to pick which one they were. And also able to pick their teachers as well, which was funny.
Cool.
Yeah. So these days I don't have to source the kids. The schools approach me. The community organisations approach me.
That's good.
And, you know, the doors that open for me lead me into situations where I get access to kids, or at least the people who work with those kids. Most recently, I was a keynote speaker at a conference in Western Australia for foster care parents.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so, of course, they now are looking at the whole concept of, well, if we know what the personalities of the foster care parents are, and they get pre-warned about which personality type of kid they come in.
Yeah.
Not only put them with the right kids, but understanding the kids are not them, and don't try and enforce your value system and your core needs onto them when really they need to understand a little bit more about themselves and express themselves in a happy, healthy way. Yeah.
And so what's next for you?
Well, I've just launched a company called Ozadi Global, which is taking the 4 animals to an international level. And already we've run a few workshops for Japanese students traveling from overseas. Now we're starting to build relationships with those Japanese schools to encourage them to send more students to Australia, but also to adopt the program in their own schools over there. And so I think there's about 4 or 5 countries that are sending students over here, and we're looking at the possibility of delivering workshops for all of those students, maybe 10,000 students a year would be doing the Ozadi Global and finding out their animal totem, their animal metaphor, dolphin, eagle, kangaroo, or wombat.
Yep.
So what's slowly been growing nationally is now being given a kickstart into growing it internationally.
Congratulations. That must feel good.
It feels exciting.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's like I've been going at this for 20 years, so I'm about to become an overnight success, I think, Vickie.
Don't they say that?
Yeah. So it's impossible to get too carried away.
Yeah.
You know, it's taken a long time, but it's taken as long as it needed to, according to my ability to grow.
Absolutely. It always takes as long as it needs to. And so I have a very important last question.
Sure.
What kind of animal are you?
Does my little talisman give it away here?
The dolphin.
Yeah, the dolphin.
So
I've got
the water.
The little dolphin tail hanging around my neck.
Yeah. And so tell me about the dolphin.
The idealists. Yeah, we want to transform and change the world, make it into a happier, healthier, more accepting place.
Fantastic.
Yes, the ancients also believed that the dolphin types, or the water types, had 1 foot in this world and 1 foot in the next world, which made it difficult for the dolphin types to actually exist wholly in this world, this 3-dimensional world, which is based on money, power, and commerce, and all of that. So it's been a particular challenge for me to master the art of business from a dolphin's perspective, because dolphins are very open, we're very trusting, and that can work for you, but it can sometimes backfire on you too.
Yeah, so you had to create other skills. Yeah.
You had to learn other skills.
Yeah.
And of course the danger is that those skills then become things like cynicism and doubt. And I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want to say, all right, I'm no longer going to be an open, trusting person. But I have had to learn the art of discernment.
Yep.
Yeah. and that's been very important for me. It's an old saying with the animal types: the eagles believe nothing until it's proven to be true, but the dolphins believe everything until it's proven to be untrue. Yeah. So, dolphin.
Very good. And is there anything that you would like to offer to our listeners in any way from today?
Look, if you want to contact us, we'll give you a percentage off any of the 5 books that I mentioned on there. In fact, what I'll do, Vickie, is following on from this podcast, I will come up with a code we can actually share with our listeners. Should we do that now?
Do it.
Yeah, and say My Destiny.
Okay.
So if you go to the Oz Identities website, www.ozidentities, spelled A-U-S, identities, plural.com.au, and you want to purchase a book, type in My Destiny. That's a capital M and a capital D. And you'll get, what did I put in the letter there? I think it was about...
Let me have a look. Okay,
I think it was...
You said... On the other side.
Why don't we just say 25% off everything that you put into the shopping cart?
25% off.
25% off. That's a quarter
and
off.
ending when?
Well, we'll
forever? That was a joke.
Until the end of... when is this going to air?
Not till January.
Not till January. So let's make it the end of February.
Done.
Okay.
Awesome.
So from when you hear this until the end of February, go to the Oz Identities website, purchase anything you like there, and type in My Destiny, and you get 25% off.
Fantastic. And depending when you are listening to this, we are talking 2020.
2020,
Just
yes.
in case you listen some other time.
Got to be clear.
We've got to be clear. So thank you so much, Michael, for your time today. Very awesome to get your insights on things today, and I'm very grateful for you coming along and taking the time to share with us today. So thank you very much.
My pleasure, Vickie. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Vickie Magic signing off, My Destiny Designer. Wake up, you've got this podcast.